Hi, my name is Blake, and today we're going to talk about this bug biting plants kit that I found at Lowe's for $10. I've been seeing these things around for a while, and I started to open it up earlier, and I quickly noticed that there was a few things wrong with the instructions, and I thought I'd just make a video about this thing after I did a bunch of research trying to figure out exactly how to go about getting these guys established and healthy. So we're gonna go ahead and open this thing up because this is an unboxing experience. I haven't actually broken any seals, but I've looked at the materials inside. We've got a bag of sphagnum moss here. I've got these crystals out just kind of for aesthetic reasons. It has nothing to do with gardening at this moment. We've got a bag of some dormant plants. There's a Venus flytrap and a pitcher plant in there, buried in this potting mix. And we've got some dirt mix here and a little pot. There's 2 plants in here, so I actually have added my own little pot to the mix. And there's an instruction booklet on the back of the cover. Now, the first thing I noticed whenever I was going over this information is that step 7 gets cut off mid-sentence, right where my finger is, and I think there was a couple of more steps and a little bit more information than what they intended. Just as well, I've learned through my research that carnivorous plants are not exactly the best of things to grow in a terrarium because they need a dormancy period, which means they're going to need to be neglected almost at low temperatures in order to have a chance to rest and get ready for the next growing season. So I think originally you're supposed to set this plastic container that everything came in as a terrarium, and we're not going to do that. I live in an area that's really humid, and it's humidity is something that's required for these things to grow. They grow naturally in bogs and wetlands. The Venus flytrap is in North and South Carolina, and I think the pitcher plants are on the eastern coast, southeastern North America, sunny open wetlands. So not the coast, but wetlands in southeastern North America. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and start opening things and go through the processes here that I've researched and on a couple of different sites. The most helpful site that I found was carnivousplants.co.uk. Carnivorous plants was all one word, and that was a really good source of information. Shout out to whoever put the work into that site. But yeah, so first off, I'm going to clear my little space here. We'll talk about each item aside from the packaged things that I have out here in a minute. I think we're going to look at our dormant plants first. So I'm going to cut this baby open. I already see what I think is the Venus flytrap, but to be honest, with them being dormant, I might not be able to tell which one's which. But here we got one plant. Oh, maybe both of them here. So these little shoots that they grow out of are called rhizomes. I don't know if this is 2 of the same plant or if this is all I got with the package. We're about to dig. This may have separated during shipping. These plants are supposed to be dormant, and maybe they are, but they look awful green to me. And I've learned enough mishaps with this. I learned about enough mishaps with this kit to kind of question almost everything that I'm seeing in it. So I'm just going to make sure there's not a pitcher plant in here. Here's another rhizome of something. There may even be another in here, I don't know. Let's see, I'm going to dump it out right here. Actually, I'm going to dump it out in a bowl. That makes sense. And we'll just make sure there's not any other rhizomes or anything in here. I think one's the pitcher plant and one's the Venus flytrap, unless if I got two of the same kind. And I don't know if this is going to be a viable rhizome or not. It has no green. It could be perfectly dormant and what we actually wanted, but I'm seeing some dead plant matter. I think it came out of dormancy and may have already died. The only reason why I say that is these roots are awful brown on the end, but we're not going to give up on it yet. Since I only have 2 pots, I think after the video is over I'm going to go get a really small one and try to plant that, but we're not going to plant this guy today just because it's in such poor shape. I don't want to plant it with the other guys in case of I don't know how sensitive they are to molds, and I don't know how sensitive they are to bacteria, so I'm just going to exercise some caution there. Alright. The only other case of finding another plant is if there's another dormant plant in this package, which I don't know. We'll sift through it before we bury everything. I think I'm going to have to go to my instructions, even though they're incomplete, and figure out what to do with all this mix. So it says step 1, fill the pot with the soil mixture. So I'm assuming that's this stuff and the soil that the plants came in. But just to make sure that we don't have another little guy hiding in here, because I'm seeing a lot of plant material in this thing. I'm sure it's just mulch of some sort. They use a lot of spangum and a lot of peats. It's not peat moss. Maybe it's peat humus or peat humus. I have a feeling that's all this stuff is. But let's kind of sift through it a little bit and just make sure. Actually, you know what? It says it has 1 package of soil mixture, 1 package of spangum moss, and 1 package containing a dormant Venus flytrap and pitcher plant. So I'm not even going to sift through this. Let's go ahead and start potting. One thing that the kit didn't include that I'm going to mix into all this is perlite. Because I read time and time again on the sites I visited and YouTube videos that I saw that they use a lot of perlite in these mixes. So what I'm going to do is 1 part of the mix and almost an equal part of the perlite, but not quite. And this is just an absorbent material that you'll find in almost any plant that you see at a garden center. It helps the soil from compacting, and it helps a little bit with moisture control or retainment, depending on how much you have in there. I use this a lot with my succulent potting mixes, and I just really like it. We're going to get quite a bit more in here. Just kind of mix it in evenly as we go along, so you don't end up with a ton of it on top or on bottom. And that's probably enough for our first pot. We'll use the pot it came with first and just start filling it up. I've been raising plants as a hobby for about 2 years now, but I've been working at a garden center for 15, and recently horticulture has become a kind of obsession and therapy for me, because I've been dealing with a lot of health problems, and this has been my way of coping with it. And it's really helped me get through the past couple of months a lot. Alright, which one do we want to do first? I wish I could guess which one was which. The leaves look almost identical. I really can't tell the difference between these two plants just by looking at them. I'm really worried that the one that dried up was one of the varieties and this is just one that split off. But regardless, we're gonna plant these guys. This is all part of the unboxing experience. I had a rhizome just pop off on its own, just from moving my hand slightly. And yeah, this is definitely a little disappointment. Part of my problem is that these sell usually in the holiday seasons, and I bought this in the middle of June. Middle of June. Nope, take that back. It's the beginning of July now. I've lost track of time. But regardless, I think if I had bought this in the winter, it still would have been dormant, and I wouldn't have a rotten rhizome as part of the package here. So yeah, we've completed step 1, and now step 2 is to soak the sphagnum moss in water. An important thing about watering your carnivorous plants that I have found through research is that you don't use tap water. You only should use distilled water, purified water. I don't know if there's any exceptions to that. They have filters that you can get that takes out a lot of the stuff. There's a thing called the TDS meter, and it measures the amount of totally dissolved solids in your water, and that's mainly talking about minerals that can build up and kill your carnivorous plants. I don't have one of those, so I'm just using distilled water and trying to trust that it's not full of minerals that have dissolved and are gonna kill my plants. Opening the sphagnum moss now, and we're gonna soak it in the water like it said to. I'm gonna push it down and make sure that water gets in there and starts spreading throughout the whole thing. Probably break it up a little bit to help that process. I think if you just left it as a chunk, it would take a lot longer to soak. It says step 3, place sphagnum moss that's been soaked on top of the soil mixture. So we're about to do that as soon as this gets a little more waterlogged. And it says I need to leave enough space for watering up to the rim. So that means I need to take some dirt out because I'm just below the rim here. Sorry if any of this is out of frame. I'm not used to making videos like this. This is my first one. As a matter of fact, my first how-to video. So I'm hoping things aren't just where you can't see them. Need a little more dirt out of there. And we got the roots down. And sphagnum moss time. I'm thinking this stuff will expand a little bit as it dries. I bought a package of some stuff that I thought was sphagnum moss, but I think I got peat humus instead. But one thing I learned through researching is that this stuff has been over-harvested and is thought to be endangered. That includes actually the sphagnum moss and the Venus flytrap. So if you're wanting to raise carnivorous plants as a hobby, I wouldn't go loading up on sphagnum moss for your materials. There's a lot of alternatives. I'll try to put a little comment about it in the description about other things you can use than this that are going to be better for the environment. But this is what the kit came with, and I didn't know anything about that before I started, so this is what we got. Alright, so I got the sphagnum moss in there. I'm having to spread it thin because I've got 2 pots I gotta cover. But I'm thinking this will probably be enough for the time being. And we've got it completely surrounding the plant there. Let's see. Like I said, it said leave enough room for watering. We've got that. We already planted it. And it says to press it down firmly into the sphagnum moss. So I think I buried it before I should have, but we'll just pull it up a little bit to remedy that situation. And it says to add 1/4 cups of untreated water and place in. And that's where the instructions end. Like I said earlier, it got cut off at step 7. They put an image, I don't think they proofread, and the other half of the brochure is in Spanish. There's no finish to the sentence, no step 8, nothing else. There's all kinds of format issues with these tables and everything else. In this little box in the corner, it has some random directions that say place within 1 to 4 feet of a window, glass, or door. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to have plenty of sun and humidity here in East Texas. But if you do put it in a window, a south window would probably give it the most light. It says to keep soil moist and never below 40 degrees. I've read things that have said otherwise. And now that we got that first guy planted, even though I have a feeling these are either both pitcher plants or both Venus flytraps, I'm going to give you a little info about each one. The Venus flytrap lures its prey, which are insects. Remember, it was bug-biting plants, with a sweet scent. Once the bugs land on the plant, they have these little things called traps. This right here. Once they get on the inside of that trap, there's these little hairs. And once either a hair has been triggered twice, that's one single hair triggered twice, or once multiple hairs have been triggered, there's a little electric surge that shoots up through the plant and causes those jaws of the trap to close shut. And they interlock just like my hands are, and that kind of creates a cage. They won't be able to close all the way flat, but that cage will encase the insect. Once it's in there, digestive enzymes will release and break down the insect into kind of a goo, and the plant will then, from the trap, absorb that goo, and over a time of probably about a week, it will be digesting that plant and recharging that energy to get that electrical surge kind of ready to fire off again. And like I said, within about a week, the trap will open up and reset. The insect carcass will probably still be in there, even though it's drained of liquids, and you can remove them if you want, but really that will act as additional bait to lure more insects into the trap. So it kind of serves the plant to leave it in there, even though it's not aesthetic. But in my opinion, it's kind of proof that, you know, your plant got a prey, it got a kill, and that's kind of the trophy sitting there. If you ever get to show off your plant, you're like, yeah, he's a killer. So a little bit of extra info before we moved on to care. They're believed to be extinct in most of their native environments. Right now, you're probably your only chance of finding them is in the bogs of North and South Carolina. I kind of mentioned that earlier. They like direct sunlight. This one didn't say full sun all day. The pitcher plant did, but the Venus flytrap needs direct sunlight throughout most of the day. So like I said, in most areas a south side window will help you out with that. But certain parts of the planet, not so much. Depends on where you live. Check out gardening information about your zone, I guess, to find out which direction you should choose a window to put your plants in. You water these guys almost like succulents, but not as extreme. You wait until they almost dry out. You don't let it dry all the way out. You always keep this a little bit moist, but you don't want to keep it waterlogged. If you're watering this thing like 4 times a day, you're probably going to drown it. They are found in bogs, but the ones that try to grow near the water actually end up not making it more often than the ones that are a little bit further away, and just their roots are kind of around the water. Or if they're further away and they don't have a direct source of water and they're just going off the humidity and rains and stuff. Especially in the summer, they can dry out a lot quicker, so keep an eye on them if they're outside especially. You may have a harder time growing them outside if you don't have a humid environment like East Texas does, but I don't think I'm going to have too much of a problem because we have severely humid atmosphere here. It needs a dormancy period. I mentioned this earlier. If you're keeping it inside, you've got to find a way to get it significantly colder, 40 to 50 degrees, preferably less than 50 degrees. If that means putting it outside in a shed in the winter or in your garage, or somehow creating an environment that's cooler than the rest of your house. We keep ours at like 70 degrees, so finding a way to drop it to 50 in the winter in East Texas might be a little bit of a challenge for me, but I'll figure it out one way or another. Worst case scenario, I'll get some sort of refrigeration experiment going with dry ice or regular ice. I'll figure it out. But whenever it's dormant, you still want to keep it kind of damp, but you won't be watering it nearly as much. The leaves will turn black, and during this dormancy period is the time to trim back your plants, or sometimes they cluster up and get kind of claustrophobic in there and you got to separate them. So whenever they're dormant, that's the time to do all that. In the growing period, they will flower in the spring if they're healthy. You can admire those flowers for a little bit, but if you let them completely flower out, they're gonna get really stressed, and in most environments they're not gonna really thrive the way they should. So the information I came across said to cut the flowers off after they've reached 5 centimeters of growth. That's the safe time to go ahead and cut them off and keep your plant thriving. You don't ever want to use any fertilizers with these. You want to use horticulture grade sand. I got that peat humus or humus earlier, and perlite. Those kinds of things don't have extra nutrients, and these guys are used to being in a nutrient deprived zone, and if you get them fertilizers, you're probably going to burn them up. Some compost that you can mix. I don't know if I mentioned the sphagnum moss. Of course, you always want to put that, some sphagnum moss or a sphagnum moss replacement on top. But yeah, that's it for that one. We're going to go over some of the pitcher plant info. And once again, it really looks like I got 2 of the same plant, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's just something to remember. The pitcher plants will lure their prey with bright colors and inviting scents. They trap their prey because they have pitcher-shaped blooms. Let's kind of hard to see in this image, but they'll go down inside of that pitcher chasing those sweet scents and bright colors, and once they get in there, it's really waxy and slippery. They can't get a grip and they can't get out. Eventually they fall to the bottom. If they don't fall to the bottom right away, actually I think this happens as soon as they start triggering those little hairs like the other guys. They start, okay, as soon as the insect gets in there, the plant starts releasing a nectar laced with poison. The insect becomes intoxicated and it'll fall to the bottom of the pitcher. Once it hits the bottom, it'll trigger a new process and enzymes will be released in order to digest the bug. These guys come, I've already said they came naturally from southeastern North America in the wetlands. Their care is going to require direct full sun, which I'm going to have to hunt down a place, but I'll be able to find it. We have a lot of trees in our property. They really can be a little bit sensitive to high winds, so I wouldn't put them in a hanging basket if you live in a coastal area or just anywhere where you've got, 15-mile-per-hour winds or whatever slapping through. Anything that's considered high winds is not good for these guys. The smaller species might be able to take it, but the taller ones are going to really struggle. They might break off. They might lose their pitchers. They're going to require a dormancy period, just like we talked about with the Venus flytraps. They're going to turn brown and die back a little bit. And one thing about these guys is that they're going to put off special leaves that get them through the winter. I don't know what these are called, but they have a special name. So whenever you start seeing some leaves that look a little bit different, you know you're doing dormancy right. During this time, you can separate the plants and trim them back and all that. But at the very end of dormancy, whenever you're getting ready for the new period, the new growth period, that's whenever it's time to repot and divide them. So you wait until the very end, probably the last 2 weeks of winter, you can start doing that stuff. And you can propagate these guys by snapping the base of the rhizomes at the end of dormancy, beginning of growth. We kind of had an accident with that earlier, and this guy broke off of one of the others. So I've got 2 rhizomes. One of them doesn't currently have a lot of roots, so this is going to be a really interesting experiment. So we talked about all this how-to and all these how-to processes. Let's talk a little bit about how I'm feeling now that I've opened this up. Nowhere on the box was it indicated that this was a seasonal project, that during the winter holiday seasons these things come out and there's a reason for it, that you can't really find them in garden centers the rest of the year. And the fact that these guys look kind of like they're out of dormancy, and the fact that I've got one rhizome that has no white roots and it's completely dried up where the other ones are nice and plump and firm. I'm not even going to plant this one actually. I think this has died. I'm just going to put it in my trash pile. I hate to be like that, but there's no fresh root growth. So I did get 2 plants out of it. I can't really say that I completely got ripped off because I did get 2 plants. And if I do everything right, I'm really hoping that they'll still do okay. I'm going to love these guys no matter what. If they don't make it, we'll mourn them for a little bit because I was excited about this project. But all in all, I'm glad I bought it. If nothing else, it's worth it for the experiment, but they really should have proofread that brochure before they sent it out, and they really should have a little more info about when, I don't know, I guess that's not such a bad thing. The only disappointment is the fact that, you know, they came out of dormancy. And on the reviews online, I read time and time again about people complaining about that. Since we're not using the plastic box, it's going to hold my leftover soil. One last thing that I haven't mentioned is that everything I read recommended that you keep these guys in a couple of centimeters of water. So that's going to be our last step, and then we're going to water them as mentioned before. I think they said just under an inch of water. That gives them a constant source of moisture that they can always have a chance of drawing from. And I have a nice little squirt bottle that I'm going to water down that soil with here. But thanks for watching. Make your own decision if you want to buy this after seeing some of the mishaps and struggles. Know that I spent a better part of maybe an hour total researching and trying to get the information that this kit did not have. So, but you just watched this video, so you got all that info already. If you decided to buy this, you wouldn't have to do the research that I did. But if you decide to get this, I hope you enjoy and I hope you have good results, just as I hope I enjoy it and have good results. I really hope these guys grow. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you haven't liked or subscribed, it would mean a lot. This is my first video. So yeah, hope you all have a good day, and we will see you at the next project.